Hello everybody. Today we are going to see some of the isms in literature. The topic includes romanticism, realism, naturalism, transcendentalism, feminism, modernism, postmodernism and existentialism. We'll begin by a short definition of what ism is all about. Ism is defined as a distinctive doctrine, cause, or a theory, a manner of action or a behavior characteristic of a specified person or a thing. It is a characteristic or a peculiar feature or a trait of a particular person or a thing. Moving on to the first ism in our list, Romanticism. Romanticism was a literary movement in the Western literature during the late 18th century. To be specific with the dates, it began with the publication of lyrical ballads by Wordsworth and Coleridge in 1798. The main characteristic feature of this movement are appreciation of nature, chivalry, adventure, and it emphasized the emotions of the individual, their passions, and their inner struggles. The writers of this ism are Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, and Shelley. Their writings were more personal and subjective. Moving on to realism and naturalism. Realism or naturalism is the quality or fact of representing a person or a thing in a way that is accurate and true to life. It attempts to present the subject matter truthfully without any sort of artificiality and superficial elements. It is a faithful representation of reality. Example, Adam Bede by George Eliot. In this particular work, we can see that the heroine is from a socially lower class and the hero belongs to a very upper class society. So the heroine wants to live the life of an upper class, so she falls in love with this particular guy. So there are realistic expressions of social gap, class conflict, feudalism, hard life of the poor sections of the society, etc. So it is a clear-cut depiction of the society without any sort of artificiality or superficial elements or magic realism or anything of that sort. What is truth is represented as it is. So that is what is realism and naturalism all about. Transcendentalism. It is a philosophical movement started in the United States of America in 1820s and 1830s. It basically believed in the inherent goodness of people and nature. It basically believed that human beings are by nature very good and it is the society and its institutions that corrupt the purity of the individual. When people are left self-reliant and independent, they are at their best. The major literary figures who followed this ism were Ralph Waldo Emerson, H.D. Thoreau, etc. Moving on to a detailed description of the next ism in the list, feminism. Feminist literature is fiction, non-fiction, drama or poetry which supports the feminist goals of defining, establishing and defending equal civil, political, economic and social rights for women. So it, as the name suggests, it talks about the rights of women. Now there are different stages in the development of feminism. The first wave of feminism, in this phase the critics consider the male novelists' marginalized treatment of female characters. In the second wave feminism, Elaine Showalter in her book A Literature of Their Own Purposes proposes three phases of women's writing. The feminine phase. In this phase, the female writers tried to talk like men writers. They did not talk about their place or their rights or about oppression of women in society. Nothing of that sort. They attempted to portray characters or they attempted to write literature in the same way like men wrote literature. In the second phase, that is the feminist phase, they criticized the oppression of women in society And in the third phase or the female phase, they no longer talked about the oppression in society. Instead, they spoke as if they were already established in society, as if they had already had an established space in the literary arena, and that women's writings were already considered valid. Moving on to modernism. Modernism began in 1920s and 1930s. Modernist writers experimented with a collage of styles. Traditional techniques remained abandoned. They attempted newer techniques and styles of writing. Okay? The writings of Sigmund Freud influenced literature tremendously. James Joyce's stream of consciousness technique gained momentum. Stream of consciousness technique is like the novel progresses through the thought process of one of its characters. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce is a very good example of stream of consciousness technique. The novel progresses through the thought process of one of its lead characters. Okay. Modernist writers' main focus was the individual rather than the society. The authors started depicting absurdity in their work. There was no proper beginning, no proper storyline, no proper ending. There was total absurdity in their work. Pastiche was one of the important features. That is, they started a collage of many elements in their work. Symbolism and formalism, that is, they instead of directly saying something, they began to use symbols in their writing, and symbols began to talk more than usual portrayal of words. And formalism is they began to concentrate on the form and structure of the literary work rather than the storyline, or rather than a proper beginning, a story reaching its climax and then going to a conclusion. Rather than the traditional story makeup, they deviated from the traditional storyline and they started focusing on the absurdity in their works. Okay. Symbolism and formalism was also gaining importance in the works of modern writers. Postmodernism. Literature after World War II came to be known as postmodern literature. This influence of the two world wars left the people least interested in the society, and they began to concentrate on their own individual life. People started getting more selfish, and so patriotism no longer was a source of enthusiasm to the people, no longer remained a source of enthusiasm to the people. People started getting frustrated out of such nationalist and patriotic feelings because extreme amount of such feelings resulted in the world wars. So people started gaining a negative attitude to such worldly affairs, and so this reflected in literature also. Postmodern fiction or postmodern writings were characterized by features like metafiction. Metafiction is something wherein when you read that fictional work, you are always reminded that you are reading a fictional work and this is not the reality, or this is you are going through a literary piece of work. You are reminded every now and then that you are reading a fiction. That is what is metafiction all about. You don't get lost in the text. Every now and then you are being reminded that you are reading a literary text. That is what is metafiction. You find unreliable narration and intertextuality. Intertextuality means you get references of other text in one text, or the one text gets completed through other text, or one text gets elaborated or explained in other text, or there are references of one text in other text. So texts are connected to one another. One text gets explained more in another text, that is intertextuality. So all these features can be seen in postmodern writers. Okay, they are also like modernists. They also experimented with forms and styles, irony, playfulness, black humor. All these are features of postmodern writers. Another notable feature is magic realism. When you hear of the word magic realism, the first writer that comes to your mind is none other than the very famous Salman Rushdie. So Salman Rushdie's work are known for magic realism. What is magic realism? There are elements of realistic life plus there are elements of superficiality or magic in it. So magical elements blends really with the realistic elements. That is what is magic realism, and you can see them in the works of Salman Rushdie. So that is postmodern writers. The myth of Sisyphus, such works, when you read such works, you don't properly get a real idea of what the whole work is all about. Okay, you don't get a clear storyline, you don't get a clear understanding of the plot, but you get so many scattered ideas here and there. Okay, Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. All these are examples of modern and postmodern works wherein there are so many ideas established in this particular work, but nothing is organized, nothing is arranged in a particular order so that you get to understand a clear storyline. So the literature after World War II was known as postmodern literature, and the writers experimented with forms and styles just like modern writers. Metafiction, unreliable narration, intertextuality, etc. were the features of postmodern writers. Now the last ism in the list, existentialism. Existentialism emerged as a movement in the 20th century. It does not believe in the existence of a godly force. Okay, the individual are free to live their life, but they are responsible for their actions. They will have to be responsible for their actions, but there is no force to control them like the God. Okay, focus was more on the individual. Subjective thoughts gained more importance. There is no general pattern of meaning to life, or there is no universal right, there is no universal wrong. Everything differed from human beings to human beings. Everyone is free to live your life, live it as you want, but you have to face the consequences. You are building your life, you are responsible for your life. You have to hold the responsibility, but you can live it the way you want. Okay, focus was on the condition of human existence, on individuals' emotions, actions, thoughts, purpose of life, etc. So the complete focus was shifted from the society to a very single individual. Okay, Jean-Paul Sartre's 1938 novel Nausea is a very fine example of existentialism. So that was it. Thank you. But before we conclude, I forgot to mention something in the modern and postmodern section. Any sort of explanation about modern and postmodern writers will not be complete if we don't mention the name of Samuel Beckett and his very famous work Waiting for Godot. So if you have read Waiting for Godot, you will understand perfectly what modern and postmodern work are all about. You don't get a complete lifeline. And also if you have read other works by the same author like Endgame or Molloy or Murphy or Unnameable, or if you read such works, you don't get a clear cut storyline. There is no beginning, there is no ending, there is no climax, nothing. but you get some scattered ideas. So that is modern and postmodern writing all about. And also yet another writer that I just mentioned, the work of that writer, that is Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus. That work is also worth mentioning in the modern and postmodern writings. So with that, we conclude this session on the isms in literature. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the session. Do like, share and subscribe if you'd like to listen to more such topics. Thank you.